Can I share my screen first? Then I'll
Sorry, Anthony, you were talking to me because...
hello, yeah. I'm planning to share my screen first.
Oh, okay, so I should stop sharing?
Yeah, well, then,
okay. No problem.
Then I'll just, okay, sorry about that.
No problem.
Well, I'll just introduce about the group, and then I'll call you once we are ready to start with your presentation.
All right. Okay.
Hello guys, nice meeting you.
Hello.
Hey.
Before we start, Philip, by 8:01, just to give time for other participants or attendees. Okay, hello everyone. So good evening. Well, welcome to our Cypress IO User Group Philippines. So this is our very first meetup actually, and we're actually very fortunate to have Filip. So before we start, I'll just wanted to have some couple of slides to present. So again, this is to remind everyone that this session is recorded and will be available in the YouTube link that we have. And as I mentioned, we are available in YouTube, and we'll be using Slido for our Q&A. So I'll message this both link to our chat after this. And we are also in social media page, Facebook, for those who wanted to continue advancing their knowledge in Cypress. So we have Cypress IOPH or the Cypress User Group. So for those who don't know, so we started this group. We done with MOT study group. So for 2 months, we've been studying Cypress, and then we decided to continue. So by putting up this community in Manila or in Philippines. Okay, so I'm your host. So I'm Anthony. So I'm for those who don't know me, I'm actually the one who's working with Ministry of Testing in the Philippines. So and of course we have Jani. So Jani is our co-organizer. So you will probably see Jani one a few months to be the host of this event as well. So it's currently working on the back end in terms of our YouTube channel and Slido as well. So thanks, Jani. And yeah, so I think without further ado, so I'd like to call Philip. And I actually just knew Philip with Test Automation University course as well. And we've been very much lucky to have Philip to be our first speaker. So we are actually making history for Cypress IO user group Philippines. So Philip.
Thank you very much, and thanks for inviting me to this lovely meetup. And thanks again for the invitation. So I hope that I'll be able to kick things off nicely for you. So let me share my screen, and because I do have a presentation that I'm going to be sharing with you, and of course I do have a couple of examples. I'll be doing some live coding today and showing you how you can actually use Cypress for testing different things and for maybe even testing your APIs, or not maybe, most certainly, because that's the topic of today. All right, you can see the name of the presentation and you should be able to see the QR code that is on the screen. Feel free to take out your phone and scan that. As Anthony already mentioned, we are going to be using Slido. So either scan the code and you'll be directed directly to the event where you can post any questions you might have, or you can go to slido.com and enter this code in the top right corner, Cypress PH, and you should be able to get in. And ask me anything you like. And I am also going to be asking you some questions, so have those ones ready. All right, so let's see. First, let me shortly introduce myself. So my name is Filip, and my background is actually kind of maybe interesting. I studied psychology, so I'm not in the tech background, but I came into tech like 5-6 years ago, something like that. And I have been working as a QA lead and test automation engineer at Slido. So we are going to actually be using Slido today, and that's the company I'm working for and where I do most of my testing. I'm also Cypress ambassador. So if you are ever eager to find some Cypress content, feel free to follow me on philipritz.com. That's my personal page where I write Cypress tips every week. Well, almost every week, because I was on a little break for a couple of weeks. I got a little tired, so I so I decided, okay, I'm not going to write for a while, but I will be coming back and writing those Cypress tips weekly. Besides that, I do workshops, presentations like this, webinars, courses. I do streaming from time to time, and I do have a YouTube channel, and all can be found in on my page, so philipritz.com. Make sure to check it out. All right, as it was already mentioned, there is a course that I made recently on Test Automation University. As everything on Test Automation University, it is free. So if you are already familiar with Cypress, you have been working with it, you can check out this advanced Cypress course, where I discuss some of the more advanced topic. Of course, not too advanced, but if you are already using Cypress, I think you will really enjoy that. So feel free to check it out. Test Automation University. And all right, yeah. So if you are in Slido, hopefully you are already. If you're not, there's still that QR code. You can scan that or go to slido.com and enter the Cypress PH event code. I do have a question for you, since I'll be talking today, and you may be asking, I'm still a little curious about you, folks. What's your job title? Are you a QA or something like that? Manual QA developer, lead SDET, SDET. All right, feel free to input. I'll give you some time. Manual QA, full stack software engineer. Do we got any designers or product managers or CEOs over here? Let's see. You can actually start typing, and if the answer has already been submitted, you can just tap on that, and it will be added to the others. And it seems the manual QA, that's the area which is represented the most in this crowd. We got 8 votes. Not sure how many people are currently attending. Maybe Anthony has a great, better insight into that.
Right now on the chat, we have on the Zoom we have 43 participants.
43, nice. All right.
I see. But we have YouTube and other social media which has other audiences.
Okay, I see people submitting answers to the Zoom chat. It is kind of out of my focus, out of sight. So if you do have a question or you want to submit an answer, please use Slido for that. I will be checking that out. And of course, I will be answering the questions that you might have at the end of the talk. So go to Slido and we can discuss over there. Thanks for sharing the link. That might speed things up. All right, I do have another question for you, and that is where it is. How much experience do you have with Cypress? So, like 1 star being you have little to no experience, you're just a rookie in this area, and 10 being that you have a lot of experience, you consider yourself a pro. Feel free to submit. All right, we got 13 votes, 14 votes. Nice. I think we had around that number also for the previous poll. Okay, someone changed their mind about number 10. All right, so we got this distributed mostly on the left side. So we got more people starting with Cypress, and I do think that you will enjoy this today if you are just starting, but also folks that are more in the middle or on the right side. I think hopefully you will learn something new today. All right, so let me go over to the next slide. And again, if you have any question, feel free to post them in Slido. Oh, and by the way, here in Slido, we are hiring. We do have a couple of positions opened. So if you're interested in the product you're just using, if you find it fun, feel free to apply, and maybe we'll meet on in the interview. So see you over there. We are remote friendly, so wherever you are, you can apply. All right, so little introduction. So some of you know Cypress, some of you don't. Just shortly, what is Cypress? It is a tool for testing anything that runs in a browser. It is built completely from ground up. It doesn't use Selenium in the background, and it runs inside the browser. That means that tests can either be written in JavaScript or they can be written in TypeScript, which of course gets compiled to JavaScript, so the browser can read that. This architecture of Cypress enables us to have some great debugging tools You can, of course, use Chrome DevTools, which are awesome. If you're working with them, you already know that. And Cypress is open source. So whatever is missing in Cypress, it still can be added by the community. So so there's that. So just a short introduction of what Cypress is. And the most question that gets asked the most is, okay, we know it is not built on Selenium, so how is it different from Selenium? And I borrowed a couple of slides from Gleb Bahmutov, former engineer in Cypress, where he explained in detail how it is different. So if you're using Selenium, you have your test code, which then is used through Selenium to call the driver and call actions in the browser. So you are using HTTP request to communicate with the browser to do certain actions. With Cypress, you have your browser, and inside that browser, you have two iframes. And inside the first iframe, you have your tests, and inside the second iframe, you have your application. What this enables you to do is that you have direct access to the application, and there's some this has some advantages, some disadvantages, but general architecture or general principles of how these two tools operate are something like this. So, all right, let's get to the topic, right? So how can we use Cypress for testing API? There are a couple of ways we can use Cypress for testing APIs. In every scenario, when we want to test API, we do have some application that is using the API. So we can either directly like skip the UI or the front end altogether and just start testing API, and we want to try test out the response that comes from the server. This is something Cypress enables you to do. Also, what we can do, we can open our application, we can see the API calls being called, and we can test those. So we can look into how the API calls are sent, and we can look directly into them. And I'm going to show you that in a minute. And moreover, we can do even more. We can stop the API's response status. We can even stop response headers and payloads, or even the thing that is sent over to the server. And we can do some dynamic response stubbing. And this is everything that I'm going to show you today. So let's get to the demo. So let me first show you an application we are going to be testing. I have this Trello application. It's a clone application of the original Trello app. It is currently running over here on localhost 3000 on my computer, and it's a simple app. You can create some boards, save them, and inside the boards we got some lists, we got some tasks, and I'm writing just nonsense just to show you how that works. And we can check it off or check. We have some detail. We can delete the task, something like that. When I look into the DevTools, let me make these bigger for you so you can see them. And I look into the network panel, you can see that whenever I, for example, create a new board, there is an API call, right? So if I look into the details of that API call, I can see the URL. So it is localhost 3000 API boards. It has a post method. We got some headers and stuff. And I also have like the payload that I'm sending. So I created the name with a couple of A's in them. And I can also look into the preview of the response, right? When I look over here and I want to test an API, I can go into a Postman and basically replicate the same action that happened when I was working with my front end. So instead of clicking, typing, and clicking save, I can call the API directly, right? And I can call the same URL. So here's my Postman, and I'm sending the HTTP 3000 API boards. I'm using the post method. Here is the URL, and here is the JSON or the payload that I'm sending to the server. So when I now send this request with the name of Hello Manila, I can see the board appearing over here. And here it is, right? So I did the exact same thing, only I skipped the UI altogether and just called an HTTP request. So this is something we can actually do in Cypress. And if you have ever used Postman, you know how powerful it is that you can write all kinds of tests for this response, etc. And we can do exactly that in Cypress. And it's really easy to do. So let me open my Cypress project. I have my application running here, and I do have 2 tests. So let's look into the first one. So here it is. It only, and I'm just going to skip this altogether. Let's run my test. Oops, it's on a different screen. Just a sec. All right. And you can see that inside my application, I am opening my request, and there's something strange happening. So hopefully that will not interfere. Oh, I opened the wrong test, sorry. Test start. This is what we want to look into. All right, so let me demonstrate. Just a sec, I'll try to make this a little bigger for you to see. All right. Okay, on the left side, I have my VS Code, and I have my test over here. I have a couple of tests inside Cypress. So if you're not familiar with Cypress, it uses this syntax borrowed from Mocha, where you have an it function, and basically it function equals a test inside Cypress. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 tests in this file. And if I do something like this, I write it.only, that means that Cypress is just going to run this single test. And what I do have here is just a single command. It has a visit command, so I'm visiting just a base URL, just the URL that was set up in Cypress JSON. So that is localhost 3000. So what this does, it will open my application. And you can see it over here. It is the Trello application. And what I see here is a list of my boards. All right, so let's try to do the same thing we were looking at inside Postman. So how to do a request in Cypress? It's actually really easy and intuitive. I do cy, that's request, and I can see that this is a function which can take a couple of options, and those options will be so method. So I know I want to send a post request. I can define the URL, and when I create a new board, that URL is API boards. And when I want to define the body, I just type body and define it. So I know that my boards have a name, and that attribute will basically be the name of the board. So let's call it Hello World. So now when I save my test, it will automatically get rerun, and I can see that it has visited my app, it has fired the request, and you can see that the Hello World board is over here. Right, so we did some automation, but we are still not testing anything. So let's try and see and look into writing a test. So let's actually write an assertion. Let's look into what this request has, what kind of response it had, and let's look into how we can test that. So as I mentioned, since we are in a browser, we can definitely use Chrome DevTools, but Cypress already has some functionality for us. So when I open my DevTools and look inside the console, let me put it down below so it's not that messy. And whenever I click on a command or any line in this test runner, I get a nice little log into my console. So I can look into the request, I can look into the command, and I can look into everything it has, every kind of information it has. So I can look into what the command has yielded, and this is something I can work with. So I can look into the body, headers, etc., etc. So let me test the body. Let me look into the response, and let's see if the response that I wanted to have, right? So for example, check I can check the body, and I can also check the status. So let's start with status, because that's the most easy thing to do. So how do I do that? Cypress operates using these command chains. So whenever I want to use the information that this request command has returned, that would be this whole yielded object, I can use command called then. And I will use an alias board and create a function. And inside this function, I can test this board parameter. So let's look into expect. Let's write an assertion, and I will explain what I just did. So board status, and I want to make sure that it equals 201, because that's the status that I want to have from this request. So what I did over here, I looked into this object that this request command has yielded, and the object is actually body, duration, headers, and status of this request. So when I want to write an assertion, I'll write expect board status to equal 201. So I'm checking this thing over here. So when I now save my test, it gets rerun, and I can see that beside the request command, I also have an assertion. So let's go even further. Let's again look into what's inside here, and let's check something with the body, right? Let's check, for example, we have an attribute start that is set to false. And whenever I create a new board in my application, a new item, I want the start attribute to be false. So if my server would respond with true, that would mean that we have a bug and we need to fix that. So just so you know what start actually means, when I have this Trello board over here, there are these stars, and I can basically favorite any board that I have in the list. So that's the functionality of the app. So when I click that, it is over here. I can see that here are my start boards, and I have some boards that are unstart. All right, so let's check the API. Let's check if the response is correct. So again, I will continue writing my function, and I'll be writing expect board body, because we are looking into the body, and we want to check the attribute that is called start, and we want to make sure that it is false, to be false, like this. So now when I save my test, I rerun it, and I can see that I'm checking the status, 201, it's good, and I'm expecting the start to be false. All right, so let's check one more thing, and then we'll move on to the next example, and let's check whether the ID is a number. So we got different types over here. We got a string, we got a number, we got Boolean, so true or false. So let's make sure that this ID is always a number, because if one day we decided, or our backend developers decided, that there should be a string and we change every ID to UID, that may maybe actually break our application. So let's make sure it doesn't happen with a nice test. And I'm going to use another type of assertion, which is assert. And this is bundled inside the Cypress. And I will check if it is a number. So I want the board body ID. I want to make sure that it is of the correct type. So these expect and assert functions, these are bundled within Cypress, and you can use them inside the then function. So this is the way you can actually test your APIs. So let me save that. And my test is complete, right? So I checked whether every time I get a response from that request that it is 201, start is false, and the body ID is a number. And actually, I don't even need to do this visit over here. I'm opening the app every time so you can see that there are these boards appearing. So you can see hello world, hello world, hello world. We have done this multiple times, but I don't actually have to do that, right? I can do a test like this, and now I'm only testing my API. I'm not even opening the front end, and I've used Cypress now just for testing API. All right, so let's move on to another example. So you can clearly test APIs with Cypress, and we have done that right now by directly calling our server. And by the way, when I say server, I do have an application, and I will make this repository available to you. And it has everything bundled in. It has the Cypress project and also the Trello application. The installation is super easy. You go just npm install and then npm start. And I have already done that. The application is running over here in the in my terminal. So I typed npm start and my application is running. But you might be curious about the database. And the database, this application is super easy. Here inside the Trello app folder, and the database is just a simple JSON file. So if you look closely inside here, you can see that these are the name of the boards we have created, right? So if I would put more understandable names in there, that might be a little clearer. Hello world, etc., etc. So whenever I create something, I do the HTTP request, it actually is going to create a new item in this list. So let me just run this test again. So another HTTP request gets called, and you can see that it has added it to the list. All right. So let's go back to the test, and let's now do something a little different than what we did in the beginning. So we did just request and we tested that. But what if we want to make sure that our application is actually behaving in the right way? So let's do something else. Let's match our requests. Let's see what the application is doing. So I have a very simple test over here. I open my application. I select the create board item. I click on that and I type in new board and hit enter. And what that does is it opens my newly created board and I'm inside. So just a simple action. For those of you who have not been using Cypress, Cypress has this amazing capability. So this test runner over here on the left side can actually take you back in time, and you can look into the state of your application during every step of the way. So when I hover over here, you can see that I'm getting my element. It actually gets highlighted. I can see that I'm clicking it and it's being covered by this overlay, but I can see the state before the click and after the click. Here it is. And I can also look into the state of the typing, right? So I can look into the before and after. So before I started typing, I could see this input, and after I typed the new board and enter, it actually redirected me in. So besides this, I can see all of the HTTP requests that are being fired whenever I'm interacting with my application. So at this exact moment, when I write new board and hit enter, I can see that there's a post request to the API boards, and we have seen that already, right? We have been creating boards through the HTTP requests right now. And what I can do with Cypress is actually use intercept command to basically watch that request as it happens. So how do I do that? I'm going to write a new command here, intercept. And for the basic usage, it has a very similar syntax as the request. So I need to define a method. So that would be post. And I need to define the URL. And that would be API boards, right? We can see it over here. So this is the API boards. When I now save this and execute my action, I can see that there's another item over here in my test, and it is called routes. So it is a list of all the. I'm sorry. Anthony, are you trying to say something?
No, it's not me.
Okay, so should I continue?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. I thought that you were talking to me. All right. So let me continue. Right. So I can, in this routes section, I can see a list of all of the HTTP requests that I'm trying to watch and try to see. And you can see what I have matched. I have matched a post request with this URL. It is not stubbed. We'll get into that in a minute. It has no alias, but during our test, it was called a single time, right? So it happened right over here, right after we hit enter on that creating new board. So let's give it an alias so we can see it better in our test. So I'm going to type alias and let's call this a board create, because that is essentially what we are doing here. So when I now save my test, I can see the request being highlighted over here, and up here in the root section, I can see that it has our alias. So what do we do now, right? We are watching it, it is highlighted, but we're not testing anything, right? So let's test something. Let's actually work with this matched request. So to do that, we can type wait, and we are going to be waiting for this board create to happen. So when I save it now, I can see that I have this wait command over here, and I can see that Cypress has waited for this HTTP request to happen and also to give me a response. So when I now click on this and open my console, I can see the details of what this wait command has actually returned. Again, I'll look into the yielded section and I see that there's an object. And inside this object, I can see all of the different attributes it has. So we got request, response, state, etc., etc. So let's look into that. Let's try to write a test in a similar fashion we did with our request command. So again, I will be using then command, again, I'll use a function. So let's have an alias, and this can be anything. It doesn't have to be board, but it just makes sense during this test. And I'll write another expect. And what do I want to test? Let's test response. Okay, let's test the response, and we'll look into the status code. So response status code. So we want to expect that the board, where is my cursor? Okay, I got it. Board response status code is equal to 201, right? So again, I save my test. And here I have it. So I'm not only testing the request that I have made, like as I did in the first example, but I'm testing a request that my application is doing and whether it is getting the right response. But also, and I think that this might be the most important part, I can actually check the request. So say, for example, our application has just been completely rewritten from ground up. We migrated from Angular to Vue or something, and we want to make sure that our application behavior is still the same, that it is sending the proper data towards the server. So we can actually check not only the response, but we can check the request. So let's check the request. I'm going to write another expect function, and I'm going to write board request, no, not response, request. And I want to make sure that when I type this new board, the name of the board, that it actually gets sent with no extra white spaces or line breaks or something like that. So when I type this new board inside that input field, it stays the same. So let's type in the body name, right? And we want it to equal, and it would be a new board. In a real world scenario, I probably use a variable for that, but hopefully you don't mind the repetition. So bam, and I have my test, right? So let's look into what I just did. I waited for the board created, HTTP request, and inside I have my request information, and I wanted to make sure that the request body name actually is equal to new board. So I'm checking whether that text is correctly sent to the server as I enter it inside this input in the application. All right, so we have been testing our requests. We have been testing requests that our application is making. So let's do something else, because Intercept is actually really powerful and it has some great capabilities. We can actually, as the name of the test suggests, we can change the response body. So intercept command actually can take two arguments, and those can be two objects. So the first object we got over here, and inside the object we got method and a URL. So these are the attributes used to match a certain request. But if we add another object, we can actually define what we want to do with that matched request. And we can do really powerful things. So as you can see, every time since I started this example, I have added a new board, either named Hello World or New Board. But let's say, for example, we want to test our application and see how the empty state looks. We can either go ahead and delete all of the boards, or we can do the following. We can define the body and say it is an empty array. So when I save that, you can see I'm opening my application with an empty array. And why is that an empty array? So let me back up a little and put this back. It is an empty array because the first thing our application does when it is opened, when I type that visit and open the localhost 3000, the first thing that happens after the visit is that the application itself is going to fire an HTTP request to a URL that is over here. The URL is localhost API boards, and the method is get. So what our application is saying to the server, okay, get me a list of all of the boards that you have inside the database. And it will do so. It will return a JSON file, and the application is going to take that data, and it is going to render that as this nice list of all of the boards. What I'm doing in Cypress essentially is saying, okay, you're not going to render the real data that comes from server. Instead, this is the data that you got from server. So instead of the list of the boards, you get an empty array, because normally what you get from server is an array of objects, and every object has an attributes, and application, when it gets that response, it knows what to do with those. And what I'm doing here essentially is that I'm substituting the real response with my own response. So the body would be an empty array. So when I save that, I'm actually stubbing the response, and I can see that it is now empty. So instead of the real response, I get my own. Mind that when I look into the data JSON, or when I look into the database, I can actually see that the boards are still here. They haven't gone anywhere. So I have cut off the real response and given it my own. And this is quite cool if you want to test for different edge cases. Say, for example, you want to change the response status. And why would you want to do that, right? So for example, let's say you have a scenario where a server gets a 403 error or 500 or something like that. And when that happens, you want to give your user some kind of good response, some kind of good error message, so that they can understand what is happening. So let me move on to the next test. And I still have the same set of actions. So I'm creating a board. I type new board, hit enter. Again, what I'm going to do my own response. So instead of the real response, which would be 201, and it would create a board, and it would the server would give me back my real data. Let's do an error. So we're going to force network error. This is what Cypress enables us to do. And I'm going to type true. So this actually simulates what happens if the request is actually being fired, but we're not getting any response whatsoever. So when that happens, I want the user to see a certain error. So now when I save my test, I'm not seeing the error, and that is because I have way too many boards in the list, and the application is not perfect. So let me run that again. And you can see that I have essentially created an edge case scenario where there would be an error on the server, and my request would not get a really response. So what this enables me to do is that I can actually look into the status, and I can write a test for that error message to be visible, right? So if I want to have my test complete, I'll type get error message, which is a selector for the error message, and I want it to be visible. So let's write should be visible. And when I now save my test, without really touching the server at all, I'm testing just my front end, and I'm testing whether that error message is actually there and is there when user actually needs it, or needs the information rather, because user actually needs the server to be running and application to be functioning. All right, so we are a little short on time, so let me just go through these two examples really quickly. And there's another thing I wanted to show you, and that is changing the response body dynamically. So what that actually is. As I said, intercept can take two arguments. These can be two objects. So the first one is matching the URL, and the second one is basically defining what to do with the response of that matched request. But not only it can take an object, it can actually take a function. So we can just pick whatever we want and just change a part of data. So let's say we got a couple of boards over here, and none of them are start, and every board is the same name. So let's say, for example, we want to change just the name of the first board. And just for the sake of this test, we can absolutely do that. So instead of passing an object, I'm going to pass a function. And I'm going to give that an argument. So that would be a request. And we want to change the reply or the response body dynamically. So what I'm going to do, and if I have my notes correctly, it will work. I'm going to use that reply function and change the response. So I want to change the response body name, and let's change the name to hello Manila, and I will return that response body. Oops, response body. I think I accidentally, yeah, good. All right, so what I did over here, just to give you a brief explanation, I passed a function that is that has a different kinds of functions and attributes inside it, and I used a reply function that is inside this function. So what I did, I took the response body and just took the first item inside the response body, which would be this one, and changed the name. So when I now save my test, I can see that the name of the first board is changed. So I took the real response from the server, so that real response actually came to me, but just changed a part of that. And this might this is maybe not the best example of this, but for example, let's say you want to test an expiring subscription. So if you have ever tested subscription that is maybe ending next year or something like that, you can actually just take a real subscription that is live today, take the HTTP request that is actually giving the information about the current subscription in your app, and just change the date, and you can see your front end and test it whether it behaves as it should. Hopefully that was understandable. All right, and for the last example, or maybe we should we got 10 minutes, so maybe we should go to the Q&A. But basically what I wanted to give you over here, let me just copy this, because okay, or just real quick, I do have a login capability over here. I do have sign up, so let me go Filip at example.com. Let's do some kind of password, doesn't really matter. And when I sign up, I can see that I am logged in. And whenever I'm logged in and create a new board, that board is going to be private. So let me, before I do that, let me actually reset all of the boards. And I'm going to create a private board. and yeah, so I am logged in, and to tell the application that I am logged in, I have this token in my cookies. It's a super long token, and that is basically my authorization. If I log out, I'll basically delete that token, and I can see that, and I can see that I am now logged out, and I cannot see my private board. If I were to log back in, or enter that cookie back, so let me set cookie, that would be Trello token, and set the name of that cookie, I can see the private board appearing again. But instead of using this cookie and pasting them inside, what I can do is I can intercept all of the HTTP requests that are being fired, and I can set the authorization inside the headers. So if you have a basic type of authorization and you send the authorization cookie in the header, as many of the applications do, you can actually skip login altogether and just amend that authorization cookie inside every header of every HTTP request that is being done in the application. So to do that, you would do something like this. You would just use a function, take all the headers from there, and take headers authorization mistyping everything authorization, and say that bearer is this. And when I now save my test, although Cypress normally logs out and clears out all the cookies before every test, you can see that I can see my private board, and my application is basically behaving as if I was logged in. And why is that? It is because inside every HTTP request that is going to be fired ever during my test, I'm actually adding this authorization header, so it seems to the application as if I'm authorized. That was fairly quick, this two last examples. So if you ever feel like you're confused by this, feel free to reach out to me, whether that would be on my page or on the Discord server that I'm usually hanging out. I'd be happy to meet you and talk to you and answer any of the questions you might have. But let's jump into the Q&A, and I see that there are a lot of questions, so let's look into them. All right, so the first question is anonymous. So can you combine API testing with UI testing, and what is the benefit? Yes, you can actually do that, and this was actually my attempt of demonstrating how that is beneficial. So it also depends like on how big is the application and what's the goal of your testing. You can definitely combine API and UI testing, and it could be absolutely beneficial. So for example, if you want to check whether your application is getting the right data, it can definitely show you some of the blind spots. So there's a change on API which was not reflected on front end, but if you're using your end-to-end tests and make sure that you check whether the response, whether you're getting the number where you should be getting a number, or you're getting a string where you should be getting a string, that can definitely be beneficial. So I would recommend to do that. Since you didn't start in tech, what was the first automation framework you learned? I have been actually playing with Selenium IDE during my beginnings. I got a little confused by that, and I was very lucky to find Cypress in its early beta stages, I tried it out and basically have been using it ever since. Since Slido is mostly a web application, it has fitted within the flow perfectly. So that was the first thing I learned, and that is what I'm working with daily. How do you approach seeding data in API testing with Cypress? Seeding data in API testing. All right, so there are data into your database in the Cypress documentation, which I have not mentioned today, but I should have because it is an awesome documentation, and there are actually different recipes for seeding your database. And I would also recommend checking out the Cypress real world application, which uses seeding a lot. So hopefully those examples can give you a good clue of how to do that. All right, how do you debug unit tests in Cypress? I'm not really using Cypress to write unit tests, so I'm not really able to answer that question. Sorry for that. But Cypress is mostly used for testing the UI, so I'm not sure how big of an application is using Cypress for writing unit tests. All right, so the next question is, how can I test APIs with Cypress when the link of the web app is static and only pop-ups change and data? Only pop-ups change. Well, that's kind of hard to answer because in order to give you a good answer, I would probably have to have more knowledge about the application. If the app is static and it's only pop-ups and change of data, then my question would be what is there to test? What would you like to test? And that could definitely give some guidance on how to decide on what to test and how to test that. And it can definitely change data because although your application itself doesn't change a lot at all, it can actually behave differently with different types of data. So, for example, a sign-up page would be a great example for that, right? So if you input a weak password, it would behave differently than it would behave when you get a strong password. So the data can definitely have effect on the front end, and that might give you some guidance on how to test that. But again, not knowing the application, that's kind of hard to answer. All right, so how to use BDD with Cypress? If by BDD you're referring to like a gherkin syntax and cucumber and these kinds of things, there is a plugin which is basically a pre-processor, so you can write your test definition files and use cucumber or the gherkin syntax to write your tests. I'm not a giant fan of that, but you can definitely do that. There is a fairly good a plugin for that. I have been testing it out. It's it's kind of fun, but yeah, I'm not not a huge fan. But check out the Cucumber preprocessor for Cypress. That would be the way to go with BDD with Cypress. Why would you use Cypress for API when it's simple enough to export collection to Postman and run it in Newman and can do the same for CI/CD? If this is what you can do, if you're familiar with that, if that's like more comfortable way for you, then go ahead and do that. Don't go with Cypress if that's like not the best experience for you. It's completely okay. I mean, if the majority of your day is writing UI tests and you're using Cypress for that, and then you get a task to write a couple of end-to-end tests, a couple of API tests, then using Cypress can definitely feel easier for you. But if you are working with multiple tools and you're using Newman and Postman, that's totally fine. You can go ahead with that. Also, Cypress opens browser when you are testing anything. So that means you have to keep that in mind. So if you want to just write API tests, so you want to write thousands of API tests, not sure if Cypress would be the number one choice for this task. I think Cypress really shines for the UI test and the integration and end to end. That's where its power is. But you can use it for API too. That's what I was trying to demonstrate. When is best to use expect versus assert and vice versa? Not sure if those are like one is better and other is worse, and if there um, would be like situations where you would absolutely need to prefer one over the other. I use those because the assertion of types is kind of easier for me to understand using assert, but for everything else, I use expect. I suggest digging through the documentation, looking and playing with that, and like those the all those chai assertions that are bundled within Cypress. I think they can give you quite a good capabilities for testing. So, choose whatever you want. Would be my advice. Are you familiar with React testing with Cypress? Um, so we do have some applications in Slido that are written in React, and for me, as someone who writes end-to-end tests, it doesn't really matter all that much whether the application is written in React or Angular or something like that. It starts to matter when I want to do like more advanced stuff, when I want to look inside the storage, when I want to but like from the high level point of view, when you're just trying to write a scenario and automate it and make sure it works, it doesn't really matter much. I'm familiar, but I don't think like that's like a key thing in all of that. Cypress dashboard, what is the advantage? I am using Cypress dashboard. I think it's awesome because it gives you some great analytics, and you can look uh, on your tests during time. You can discover which tests are flaky. You can see the number of your tests growing, most common failures, and those are really valuable information that can give you great insight into, okay, I need to stabilize this test. Okay, this error happens way too often. What do we do about that? And that's really good. That would be like the biggest advantage for me. Is there any repository such as GitHub or anything for your demo? So maybe I can try. Yeah, check out my GitHub. I will be. I actually wanted to have this exact repo that I was working on today ready for the talk. Something broke. It is there. There is a repo called Cypress Manila Meetup, but it's empty. So let me fix that, and I will make sure that it is available today. So you can try it all. But I also have the Trello app, which is super simple to install. I have tons of explanations and stuff like that on my blog. So yeah, definitely go ahead and try that. When will you do a workshop in English? Oh, thank you for that question. I will do a workshop in English, but I'm not sure when. I wanted to do it so bad in like September, October, but my September and October look so crazy right now that I'm not sure I will be able to do that. But I definitely want to do a workshop in English. I do one in Slovak language for like the local community. It has been getting great responses, so I'd be super happy to bring it to the world. And I am working on that. It is just much slower than I wanted, but I will do that, and I will let you know. If you follow me on social networks, I'll start shouting to the world once that's ready, so you will not miss it. And thank you. That is so nice that you're interested in that. Anthony, how are we with the time? I think we kind of passed it already, right?
So that's why if you wanted, we could pick one question, just to
pick one question. So I would maybe give you like 5 seconds to upvote the one one that you want, and I can answer that. But okay, let's pick one. I think that's not fair to like give you just 5 seconds. So let me pick one. Okay, someone has upvoted a question. I can answer this one. How would you test sorting with Cypress? Because it's an easy answer. I do have a blog about that. So if you go to philipritz.com, you can see search for lists, and I have a blog on testing lists with Cypress, and that is actually about testing sorting and stuff like that. So yeah, you'll find an answer there. And I have mentioned that a couple of times today. So philipritz.com, that is my blog, and there are some slash URLs that you can check out. So you can easily get to my YouTube channel, get to the Discord where we can chat. I'm trying to be there for you. And you can follow me on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Twitch, and also GitHub. So that's me, and I hope we can stay in touch and chat about Cypress and everything.
I think that's it. I think thank you so much, Philip, for your sharing your information. I know it's you're on the other side of the world right now, and thank you for being our first speaker for our Cypress IO user. To see you soon, and we'll still be. I'm hoping we could also help our community to grow with your blogs and your workshop. So I'll make sure that I will be posting your workshops and blogs probably in our Facebook page. Okay, so I think
thank you, Anthony.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for inviting me. It was a great fun with you, and yeah, we'll see you around.
Yeah, see you around.
Good luck with the community.
Yeah, thank you so much, and apology for exceeding around 9 minutes, but I think this is a very interactive discussion for everyone. So thank you, and thanks again, Johnny.
Okay, bye everyone.
Okay, bye. Thank you.